Well, thank you very much, and I want to thank you all for including me and my distinguished colleagues here. You know, just to put a finer point on something which Deputy Secretary Nye said, you really are critical to our diplomacy. Most people in the world will never never encounter a U.S. soldier, they're never going to meet a U.S. diplomat, they're never going to meet a U.S. aid worker. Their impressions of the leadership of the United States, of the opportunities created by the United States, the decision to invest in the United States, and their belief in our values and our integrity comes from you. So you're the front line, and you're truly the ambassadors. And so I thank you very much for letting us address you. When we heard that the President was announcing 2 years ago this National Export Initiative and intended to double exports from the United States in a period of 5 years, we had a real challenge in Australia because it's a very developed trade relationship. We actually have a trade surplus with Australia, and the question was, how do you double all of that in just 5 years? And so the first thing we did was we sat down with the American chambers throughout in every one of the capitals in Australia to get your insights about how we could work better with you and how we could accomplish this goal. And there were essentially 5 things that we were told where we could add value for the chambers. The first is the convening power. It's the ability to draw people together that you get from being part of the U.S. government, the prestige of the U.S. in these host countries, but also just having a really nice house to bring people over to. Second was our capacity for advocacy, both on a industry-wide basis, but then in individual cases where there's just one American bidder for specific companies. Third, our ability to publicize issues and raise public attention and awareness on specific issues. The third is the fact that because we're not in any one industry, we're not siloed, we get information that sometimes we can piece connections together that others, piece information together and draw connections that others wouldn't have. And so we've been able to sometimes advise the business community about issues that they may not see coming on the horizon. And then finally, the ability to take your messages and do outreach with them back in the United States. So I want to just give you a quick example on each one of those and then pass this over to my colleagues. First, on convening power, you should take full advantage of our embassies. What we have done in Australia is do it sector by sector. And so we have had groups get together on issues of agriculture, foreign military sales. We had big groups on cyber. We've had them on clean tech, biotech, energy, mining, you name it. And these have all borne fruit, in part because you get a conversation going and you find out where there are gaps and where there are opportunities. But whenever we have major U.S. visitors come in, senators, people like Deputy Secretary Nye, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Homeland Security, Department of Justice, whatever it is, we will bring them in. And we can also draw over prime ministers, foreign ministers, cabinet members, and people who you want to get some face time with. Second, our advocacy. We do this on an industry-wide basis. I'll give you 2 quick examples. There was some real concern that a carbon tax, which is being implemented in Australia, would damage U.S. investments and opportunities. So we sat down with all of the major companies that had an interest in this and got their plug numbers to figure out what at what point they would have a problem if we didn't advocate on their behalf. And we ended up having a real impact on Australia's determination about where the appropriate price was. We've done the same thing with taxes and other issues. On an industry-wide, on a case-by-case basis, we have done individual advocacy for communications companies. When a national broadband network was established in Australia, we've done it on satellite ships, planes, helicopters, you name it. So again, come to us. Publicity. There was a lot of misinformation in Australia regarding the cloud and whether or not it was secure and whether or not the USA Patriot Act would somehow allow government to snoop on private information that Australians put into cloud forums. We were able to have a nationwide conference that was telecast and bring in all the key partners recently to just debunk it. And we have seen the regulatory environment in Australia and the discussion about cloud computing go 180 degrees in that time. So that's another opportunity that you can draw on us for. Third is insights. At one point, we started to hear from so many different companies in Western Australia that they were starting new plants, and we thought they're going to run out of labor. They don't have enough highly skilled labor to do this. So we started bringing groups together, and they all saw the same problem down the road. We're now working with the Australian government to expedite U.S. worker visas and also to provide skills training in the United States and skills assessment so they can get the workers out that they need. And then finally, outreach. Right after this, I'm going to be heading back to the United States. I'm going to be doing a trade mission, reverse trade mission, which is being organized by American Chamber for me to go out and advocate about export opportunities, employment opportunities, investment opportunities for American companies back in Australia. And that's both being facilitated by the American Chamber, but also we pick the cities and we pick the issues based upon your input. So you are critical to our work. I've taken up too much time, but I really want to thank you for what you've done, and hopefully this will give you some food for thought.